Thank you very much. I'll make a couple of preliminary remarks. Can I just ask, can everybody hear me very well? So I don't have to raise my voice. Thank you. Thumbs up there from Francesco. Always happy to see you, Francesco. Well, I'm very happy to be here in sunny Durham. We've just returned, Professor Rubin and I, from China, where it was also sunny. So we seem to have brought the sunshine back, certainly to Durham. And that also allows me to thank Professor Rubin, as well as, of course, Petra, and the rest of the Just Now initiative team for inviting me to give my remarks. You can see that they are in the form of speaking notes, which I hope to share with everyone. I hope everyone can possibly read them as I go along. And yes, thank you, Mustafa, for expanding them. I should just open with a couple of points about Sikandar's excellent presentation. He actually traces much more deeply and much more comprehensively some of the points that I will now be raising in my presentation. So again, my tributes to the organizers for putting this together, because I'm hoping now to turn the focus to the actual Just Now initiative. And of course, as everybody knows, but just to reiterate, that means, of course, it means just transitions to a net zero world. But you can also read it as actually as saying justice now, in a much more emphatic way, right? Just now, justice now. So that really struck me actually as the phrase. Now, I'm assuming the role of a critical friend. And by the way, I'm also aware that I'm the last speaker before your lunch, so I'm going to really try and summarize the points that I'm making. And of course, you have the benefit, hopefully the benefit, of the speaking notes that I've already submitted to Petra and to Mustafa and the other panelists of this first panel. So I'm very happy for the speaking notes to be distributed to all of you here and anybody also online, etc. What's very important about this idea of being a critical friend is obviously that I'm here as a friend first. Then what I'm hoping to do is develop a kind of critical assessment, a critical map to hopefully sort of allow the Just Now initiative, the Just Now project team, to have a think about some of the ideas, some of the thoughts that I want to share here, with a view to sort of developing and enhancing what they already have in terms of their documentation. So the three documents that I'll be basing this assessment on is the initial invitation letter, which contained a very succinct concept note entitled an interdisciplinary research agenda for a safer and fairer future. The Just Now executive summary, which you can access from the webpage. And again, this is an exploration of the resources available, which is very important, of course, because it has to be front-facing, especially over the internet now. And then, of course, the Just Now delivery plan. Sorry, missing a Y there, I can see that. Just Now delivery plan, which charts the passage from vision to outputs. Now, the next, if I can just move on, yes. So the next, thank you, Mustafa. The next point, of course, is to sort of think about how you actually want to evaluate something like a Just Now initiative or project. What are the evaluative criteria? And of course, the first criteria would be, I would suggest, given the breadth of expertise being brought together by the team, experts in computer science, experts in economics, it's clearly bringing the physical and natural sciences together, as well as obviously the social sciences, with that rather sharp point, I would suggest, within the law and policy framework, right? So I think a legitimate question is to ask, is it sufficiently holistic in its approach? And in doing so, I'm going to just adopt two terms which are, I think, familiar to all of you. Does it ultimately adopt a cradle-to-grave approach? Do we take it in its entirety? And in doing so, and here's where I pick up on Sikandar's and also Justice Mansour Ali Shah's point, which is a very valid point from the Global South. Do we ensure that no one is left behind? Do we try to represent all the constituencies that we can possibly grasp, both human, and another point that I want to just develop here, and the natural environmental constituencies, which of course have no voice, within human systems of governance, policy, and law, and which therefore we have to provide a voice for. And how do we articulate that voice for the natural environment, for biodiversity, in favor of biodiversity, for wildlife? So those are the kinds of evaluative criteria. Again, sorry. Oh yes, of course I can't move it here. Mustafa, you can just move it. Thank you. Just to the next. Yes, I think we can skip to the next page already. Thank you. Yeah. Yes. Right. And what I then want to suggest is actually that the Just Now initiative or project has at least two main objectives. Obviously, we've already heard about the idea of just transitions. I'll just make a point. I don't know whether I've skipped it here, but it's very important to note that phrase in the plural, just transitions. And for me, that suggests that we are on hopefully parallel paths, which we want to combine, but we have to accept that they are parallel paths. So, for example, Professor Alvarez's presentation really is charting one aspect of economic transition. But it's very clear that the Just Now initiative puts also very much forward the idea of the social transition alongside the economic transition. The economic transition, arguably, at least from the wording presented by the Just Now initiative documents that I've seen, seems to take a slight precedence, but in a way that also feeds back to Sikandar's point earlier, that so far when we talk about transition, we do talk about it in terms of economic and more generally energy and extractive industry terms. Do we need to reappraise that kind of possible overemphasis on the economic transition? Yet at the same time, of course, we have to accept that we're living in largely a capitalist world. So what we have to do is, unless we come up with a completely new global and indeed mostly national economic system, we need to sort of try to ensure that we marry these two transitions: economic transition, followed by obviously the requisite social transition as well. And I would go further to say, if I may, to translate those into the decarbonization. The economic transition really is about the decarbonization of economies, and the social transition is towards sustainable social well-being. And very much the emphasis not just on physical well-being, but also obviously psychological, mental well-being. Mustafa, we can go a bit further down now. And here we see that the Just Now initiative really has put together a team, which I'm sure, and which is also, I can see from the, not the delivery plan, but I think the website, that this team will also expand with new appointments in all the right areas. Now, that's where I picked up that transitions is in plural. However, strand 1 talks about, and these are the strands within the delivery plan. Sorry, I seem to have missed a couple of Y's there from the delivery, right? It does, I think this needs maybe further exploration and further clarification. It links the just transition concept with legal compliance criteria. And I wonder whether that is too quick a narrowing of the more broader idea of just transition, and indeed, especially just transitions to just legal compliance, because we have to be very careful with the notion of legal compliance. As lawyers, we tend to then start burrowing into a kind of rabbit hole as to, what are the judicial remedies, whether there's an implementation and compliance committee, which tends to work then within the context of the frame of the treaty, etc. So I would be wary about linking just transitions too directly to legal compliance criteria. I think we need to really keep that broad emphasis on transitions and how we can facilitate transitions through the research undertaken by the Just Now initiative, but also to actually see solutions that can work on the ground, as Sikandar very rightfully and correctly and very well articulated before me. So that's my point about the strand. And I can also see that I've also seen that it's interesting to note that aside from strand one, the just transition concept is not actually mentioned in the other three strands. Is this by design, or is there a future suggestion that these other strands will then move back towards addressing the just transitions, overarching just transitions concept? This is again a question I think that the team and project might benefit from considering. And then what I would say, probably this is page 2, right? We can move on to page 3 already, Mustafa, while I just elaborate on this point, which is that I would say something slightly missing was the idea of the third phase of sustainable development, as we all know, economic, social, and environmental transition. What do we mean by environmental transition? I accept, as you can see from the speaking notes, that it is a much more complex idea, but it does feed back into what Justice Mansoor Ali Shah mentioned, which is this idea of focusing also on transition in the form of adaptation. I think climate adaptation, especially in the global south, is going to be vitally important. It's financing, it's selection. Do we go for a project in Pakistan, and more specifically, do we go for a project in a particular area in Pakistan, or an urban-based project in Pakistan? Those kinds of decisions require, obviously, as I said already, financing, investment, but also levels of expertise, local know-how, which will drive those decisions, which will be, I think, exactly the stuff that the Just Now initiative can really contribute to. And I would love to see that. So moving on to, yes, I think I missed the point, sorry, in my haste to try to finish in time to give you all your lunch. One thing I want to highlight about the issue of electrification, and that's a more local point. And although the Just Now initiative clearly has a global focus, I think there are various issues we can usefully attend to or address within the context of the UK, the United Kingdom. I am, of course, an academic also from Liverpool John Moores. So what interests me about the Just Now initiative in the UK context is how you will follow the newly elected, still very newly elected new UK Labour government and its attempts to really move the UK context to a transition, to an energy transition path through the Great British Energy Company. But at the same time, we already see the backlash. We already see, for example, that Aberdeen is losing a lot of its industry, which is obviously front-facing in terms of the offshore oil and gas industry. We already see, for example, that Grangemouth in Scotland, Scotland's only oil refinery, is closing down. We already see, there was another example, sorry, it's just slipped my mind. Oh, yes, of course, the Tata-owned steel furnace in Port Talbot having to close down because they want to then bring in, and again, that's for a very useful energy transition in terms of the source for the Tata steel furnace to move to a renewable energy source, but it's going to put people out of work. So we see the social dislocation and the economic dislocation directly there. So there are examples in this jurisdiction, which I think the Just Now initiative can do well to also focus on, as opposed to, well, not as opposed to, but alongside the regional points. I think I'll come very quickly that, yes, we are already, sorry, just the last page if you can, Mustafa. And I'll just try to finish off there. I'll probably take about 15 minutes, Mustafa. So just the last page, yeah. Sorry, before the delivery plan. Page 4, yeah, there. Yes. Yeah, so I've already mentioned the point about natural environment. I suppose the one last smaller point is that when I looked at strand 4 within the delivery plan, capacity building and knowledge transfer, I saw that the proposed outputs include, of course, the very REF Research Excellence Framework for 2029, clearly the next one. They're very much related to impact case studies and media engagement and training. But only the last of these really, I would say, are directly related to capacity building and knowledge transfer. So I would like to see that particular strand developed a bit further. What aspect of training can Just Now initiative really bring to the table to develop capacity building and technology transfer? Is it really directed only, I would suggest, towards REF 2029 in the form of impact case studies, or will the impact case studies, really be studies that will have benefits for the actual, social conditions or constituencies on the ground, social constituencies on the ground that will be subject of those case studies. So overall, just finishing off now, there is much to be commended. I didn't see anything that struck me as being completely untoward from what I would expect to see from such an expert team gathered together under Petra's guidance and leadership, and obviously under the overall guidance of Volker. So I'm very happy to support, to commend this initiative, and to hopefully be part of its wider agenda, its network. I'm hopeful that my critical friend assessment will go down well with the team, and I'm invited back, possibly, for the next meeting. And thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy your lunch. Thank you.